So I think I have a bit of a difficult mission today, given that, I mean, the previous arguments were against, Islam or elements of Islam, and I'm here actually to argue about being a Muslim. And that's why I had to bring some backup, so I got my wife and my son over there, so who are with me. I could call myself and use that title that I'm a progressive, enlightened Muslim, but I could also add another term that I heard today, cute Muslim. Somebody was mentioning that term as well. I would love to add that term as well to the title. But in any case, I'm not here actually to defend elements related to the Quran. I must admit I'm not as well-read as Ibrahim is, or I'm not a theologist. I'm not somebody who's studied in depth the Quran. I definitely lived in a country that and was born in a Muslim family, practiced Islam as everybody does, and definitely from Islam I did gather some of the many values that I identify with, and many of the guiding morals that guide me throughout life. So definitely I'm not here to defend, or get into the analysis or critique of many of the elements that were mentioned. But I'm also a scientist, and I do use reason in my day-to-day work. And of course, I do have my criticism to many of the elements that come up, and I do agree with many of the things that Janine mentioned, what also Ibrahim mentions, even though he mentions it in a very, tough and rough way. But I do, hear it, and I do understand, why there is concern from that aspect. But similarly, I also, as I mentioned, I define myself as a Muslim, and that definition gives me that moral guidance in many aspects of my life. It gives me the chance to seek many of the questions related to meanings and purpose. I use Islam or my Muslim identity to answer some of those questions. And definitely, when human tragedy sets in, that has been, the case of helping me. And in many instances in my family where we passed through, certain difficulties, that was very much helpful. So I see some of the positives that are helpful there. I also, from Islam, even though I see what Ibrahim mentioned and what others talk about Islam, but I also see Islam from a different perspective as well, and from my own personal experience. My Islam is that from which I learned the words tafakkarun or taqalun, meaning thinking and using your brain, and it's mentioned hundreds of times as my understanding, and of course, we could examine that. So that's something that I got out of my Islam. My Islam is that when I went to the mosque as a 10-year-old boy, sitting on the floor with everybody in equity, rich and poor, at least that's the perception that I got. Whether that's really practiced in real life in our countries, that's something else. But that's the perception that I got from Islam. My Islam is that of not interpreting Quran literally, but be flexible about it, and actually extract from it the values. At least for me, that's my version of Islam, that attends to fairness and compassion. And my Islam is that what Janine mentioned of the 8th and towards the 13th century, where Muslims at that time shared in the civilization of bringing in algebra, geometry, astronomy, engineering, design, urban cities. All of this was also present during the time of Islam. So it wasn't necessarily regressive. And my Islam also is the one that teaches me discipline when I'm fasting during this month of Ramadan, or at least that's what I'm, extracting from it. So Islam for me is I practice it as an empowered Muslim. I practice it with an inquisitive mind, with a doubtful mind, with a questioning mind, and with the mind that rejects traditional interpretations, social or political ideas that are traditional. I practice my Islam in that manner. And I also celebrate reason, and I hold fairness and equity as a holy moral compass for myself. But I also understand that I'm in a journey. And I know, I'm not that young, and I remember my perspectives changing from one phase to another. So I'm not fixed at one proposition of that Islam. I am flexible and open to understanding and knowing more. However, that same scientific mind and doubtful mind forces me also to use that reasoning to answer that question of the title of my presentation, which is Enlightened, Progressive, and Muslim. Can that be combined? Or in these times, religion is definitely looked at stigma, in a negative stigma, and looked at down. But the question for me begs the using of reasoning and science. And that's why I'm going to bore you a little bit with a few slides related to epidemiology, the field that I work in. So you get two things for the price of one today. So you get a small lecture on epidemiology. So bear with me a little bit. And one of the main elements of epidemiology that we use when we study disease is that related to cause. Understanding if certain variables do affect and are the cause of disease or not. And it's important to understand, bring those elements. If we are indeed interested in preventing something that we see as wrong, in this case disease, in diagnosing it and in treating it. So cause is an important element, at least in epidemiology. And keep it in mind as I flip through the slides and pause those questions on Islam itself. So, for cause, and I know that there are many intelligent people on the floor, and it might be repetitive for many, but for a cause, there has to be some elements that have to be in place there. And there are different aspects related to cause. It's a very complicated thing, as many might know. So there are causes that are just sufficient, and in this case, it's just the presence of a variable will lead to a disease. And if we drop that same application on Islam, is Islam sufficient to be progressive? And I'm taking it to the other direction, or being enlightened? Can we come to that conclusion? And similarly, is Islam sufficient to be regressive and backward? Again, I'm not posing any answers to it. Is it a necessary cause? Is it necessarily sufficient that will be involved in a sufficient cause that without it the cause would not be there? Similarly, the question lies: is Islam necessary to be progressive or regressive? And also within that causal thought process, there are many elements towards impacting an effect. So it could be not just one cause, different causes could be impacted. And there are factors related in causation that predispose to that. In this case, in epidemiology, it may be age, sex. We could think of other aspects that could be related to if our thought that does religion lead to enlightenment or does it lead to regressiveness. Those predisposing factors need to be thought in as well. Enabling factors, are they there? Precipitating factors, reinforcing factors, interaction, are there interactions? What I want to say is that there are many elements that need to be very well thought of and analyzed before arriving to any sort of conclusion. And of course, that term of causation and correlation are not the same thing. So arriving to conclusions has to be very well thought of and very well studied before we fall into that trap. Similarly, I'll finish in a couple of slides related to causation, that it has to be temporal, meaning that it has to come before the disease, that it's rational without taking off our biases off of this, that it's consistent. If it's repetitive in different places, it leads to the same thing. And similarly, we could pose the question, do we think that Muslims in the West are are more or less similarly enlightened or backward as those in the Middle East? Is it consistent? Those response is somebody who's more devout, less progressive, or more enlightened. So it definitely puts that question of elements that could be associated, and I use that. I'm sure that everybody heard about that ice cream example where the observation that higher ice cream selling ended up for more drowning with people, and and there could be a confounder, maybe hot weather or so and so on. So it's very important. Again, is it really Islam that is leading to enlightenment? And again, I'm using the opposite of what might be expected, or leading to backwardness, or is it some third variable that is leading to all of this? So I come to some very important questions that we have to pose to ourselves. Can we confidently make the claim that abolishing religion or Islam will end up war, killing, homophobia, all the wrong things that we all agree upon and over here? Is it our battle? Is it our battle towards religion, or is it towards oppression, judgmentalism? And I'm making new words now. Lack of freedom of speech, lack of doubt, lack of critique, not questioning authority, the use of religion for political and economic empowerment. Is that our real battle, or is the battle with religion itself and Islam in specific? And the question, does Donald Trump need a religion to bash women, Latin Americans, Muslims, Middle Easterns, and others?
He's got one.
I'm not sure if he's using it though, or if we take it off, will he change? I'm not sure. So don't lose the focus on what exactly is our battle. What is our battle? Is, again, our battle oppression, lack of freedom, and all those things, or is our battle religion, Muslims, and Islam? That's very, very important to have into consideration. Especially that, and I'm not sure if the statistics are correct or not, that still the majority of the world does believe in a religion. So if we are interested in creating that space of freedom of speech, of everybody being free of and free to believe or not believe and say what they want, then we have to engage. We have to engage with that majority of the world that is doing. And that will not happen if our focus is mainly towards bashing religions. I think Janine mentioned, or Zerar mentioned, it's towards the actions. Even Ibrahim mentioned it. And I put even. So, and we know that religion, of course, has, and Zerar, you really hit the nail on the head, that there are many aspects to believing in religion, whether it's emotional needs, giving hope, structure, tradition, moral guidance, but there's also fear, and there's also social pressure, and there's indoctrination and tribalism and hatred. What should we be focusing on? So I end by flagging a warning of beware of falling into the recurring trap. The recurring trap of the fundamentalist and the extremist. The fundamentalist and extremist who is self-righteous and refuses the others, or monopolizes the truth and looks at others in a degradatory way. And Zerar, with his two circles and his proposition of how to move forwards, I think touches on some of those aspects. And beware of falling into the trap of finding correlation as a causation. So this begs the question of whether the Muslimist mission is a mission of reform, debate, and changing the political, social, and religious environment to protect freedom from and freedom to, or is the mission to eliminate religion and Islam? I think keeping and maintaining the focus will accomplish much more, will maintain the engagement, and will support others who are not as lucky or have the luxury that everyone has here in a country that allows for that freedom of speech. So we have to engage with those countries and try to change the laws and the rules to allow for that, and the social and otherwise. I end by stay curious, and that's Mr. Marwan back there. He's always curious. And that's it. Thank you so much.